I can register it. Ligzin. Dalon. Droma. Right? So don't pronounce the L. And that signifies a female monk, so to speak. Or
well, actually, I know there are male Tara.
But they use Georgia.
Yes, Georgia is associated with male. Donna is Tara.
Okay.
She is Tara.
Got it.
But there, I had a teacher.
A male name.
Who's called Tara. So, see, that is no gender in the name so
right.
much. It could be anything. So, enjoy it, whether you're Christian or Jew.
And is Tara an incarnation of Vishnu, or what's Tara?
She is not necessarily. I mean, there may be the Hindus say that Buddha is an incarnation of Vishnu.
Yeah.
So they will say that, you know, Buddhism is a branch of Hinduism, which is kind of a nice, friendly thing to say.
I think so. I like that a lot, actually.
I'm sure.
I actually believe that it is. You know, after reading all the different things, I just don't think it's inescapable that it is a variation of. And
It's inescapable, what?
That is a variation on the old.
Well, it grows from India. It grows from.
Well, Jesus was a Jew before he was a Christian.
Yeah.
And you know,
Before there were Christians.
Before he was Buddha.
No, there's a very powerful. And for Tibetans, India is a noble. They never just say India. They say noble. Arya Bharat. Arya means superior, noble. Because Buddha was born there for them, although technically he was born inside what was then the Nepali border. And just tremendous gratitude for India for settling all the refugees. So real veneration. Hi.
Hello.
It's not 9:30. Okay. Oh, thank you.
We've learned this guy needs some tape next time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Greetings. How are you? You're welcome to a cushion or a chair or to move back and forth between them, whatever you prefer. Is this your first time to do this? Welcome. May I ask your name? Marina? Mariana. Thank you, Mariana. So this morning from now until 11,
Should I slide?
one of you move. I'm a face person. I like to do your faces. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the second talk in a series of introducing Buddhism, 10:30 to 11 on Sundays, I don't know, for a few more weeks. And so last time, Harvey Namgyal Dorje introduced the birth of the Buddha and the early life of the Buddha. And so I'm continuing that story. And as I continue, I want to there are many versions of the life of the Buddha. And the early Buddhist tradition, now extant as the Theravada tradition, which we have in Southeast Asia, primarily Burma, Thailand, but also Vietnam, Cambodia, understands that the Buddha had been practicing, actually both traditions understand that he took a vow, who knows how long ago, before historical time, before an earlier Buddha, Dipankara, and he was so impressed with his radiance and the kind of magnificence of this being, he made a vow then and there, I want to be a Buddha. So you know already there are many Buddhas in Buddhism, not just one. And he practiced for centuries, eons in fact, life after life after life. And then in a life which we narrate here, he actually achieved awakening for the first time. That's what the early tradition says. As Buddhism develops in India, there come to be more and more, we could say, fantastical ideas of what a Buddha is. And this Buddha is long ago awakened, according to it's called the Mahayana, the great, translates as the great vehicle. And he was just pretending to be an ordinary person in the first part of his life, so that people like us, who are ordinary people, could see what it looks like for a human being to practice and become a Buddha. Because in both stories, and I'm going to go there shortly, he sits down and he awakens beneath the Bodhi tree in India, in Bihar, in Bodh Gaya, and you can still go to Bodh Gaya and sit under the Bodhi tree, which is an offshoot taken from Sri Lanka, from the actual Bodhi tree. And one of our students, Mark, he's not on now, he made a point of bringing back a lot of seeds from that tree in Bodh Gaya, and he's kind of like, Johnny Appleseed, he's kind of like Mark Bodhi seed, and many of us have small Bodhi plants, in fact trees now, in our backyards because he has given us seeds. So if that interests you, maybe, he still has them. So for the Mahayana tradition, he's already fully awakened before birth. He intentionally comes to this world. There's a kind of a scene, I don't know if Hari would have mentioned this, up in the heavens where the Buddhas hang out, and they were kind of like, almost like giving out assignments, like, where are you going to go? Where am I going to go? And they all wanted to go to really pleasant worlds. This was considered a hardship post, our world. But Gautama Buddha, so Gautama is his given name, Gautama Buddha said, I'm going to go there, this world, the Saha world. The Saha world means it's a place where we don't understand things very clearly. So this particular edition, it was written only in the 1800s by a Tibetan, Tenzin Chogyal. It's a Penguin edition called The Life of the Buddha, and it's very nice. One of my colleagues translated it, and I want to read one sentence that I don't remember from other stories of the Buddha. Very early on, page 4, the human predicament. So I want to say, why do we talk about the story of the Buddha? Well, most traditions talk about the story of their founder. Christians talk, of course, about Christ and the disciples. Jews talk about Moses and his encounter with God. Muslims talk about Muhammad. It's important to know where you come from, so to speak. Families talk about their previous generations. So since the time of the Buddha, since he became recognized as a Buddha, people have wanted to know how he lived. What did he do? In temples in India to this day, and I guess temples outside of India too, you find paintings on walls of temples, the story of the Buddha. It's a way to learn. And most people weren't literate either, so it was a way to learn. So the story of the Buddha is part of becoming familiar with the Buddhist tradition, and also, of course, his activities and his insights are regarded as central to the tradition. There have been many, many permutations, many commentaries. There are different Buddhist traditions around the world, but all are, as our teacher said, when he would come here and he would visit Thai temples and Vietnamese temples and Chinese temples, and of course Stone Mountain, and he would always say, we're all the children of the Buddha. So here's this. So we learn about the Buddha to learn about Buddhism and what Buddhists believe and what we consider, an exemplary kind of being that we would like to emulate. Is there a point in our emulating the Buddha? So the human predicament. Now, living beings are like the sky. They are limitless. We often call to mind the phrase as vast as space, wherever space exists, so that's big. And immediately your mind kind of goes, they're like the sky. They are limitless. Every living being is in essence naturally luminous. This is a phrase from an old sutra and very central to our perspective of the Buddhist teaching. Every being is luminous. That means every person can recognize their luminosity, and that's in short what awakening is, especially in our tradition, which we'll talk about later in this course. Every living being, since they're luminous, possesses the awakened heart of Buddha. And yet, the truth of this is obscured by a dim unknowing. And because of this, we uncontrollably experience every manner of grief. That's kind of it in a nutshell. We are luminous. We have Buddha potential, everyone without exception. The people we like, the people we don't like, the people on the wrong side of the political line, which is very strong nowadays, everyone. And yet, we suffer because we don't recognize who and what we really are. Now, this is a particularly central pivot point in the tradition that we particularly are connected with, the ancient ones, Nyingma in Tibet. And it originates in India, this idea. And if you're familiar with Hinduism, you might find something a little familiar sounding, that everybody has the nature of Satchitananda, being consciousness and bliss. Given the unending nature of cyclic existence, so that's samsara, belief that we and the animals, the fish, the four-leggeds, the two-leggeds, the ants, however many legs, we're all reborn again and again and again and again, and that is not good news, because every time we're reborn, who knows, the dice are thrown. They're not really dice, it comes out of our own actions, but who knows where we'll end up. We have all accumulated very powerful good actions. We're here as human beings with time and resources enough to study like this, gather together like this on a Sunday, and honestly, we've all also done really terrible things, so you don't know which is going to come to the fore in the moment of death and take us into the next life, but there's a lot we can do about that. Practicing goodness, wholeness, very much orients us toward a positive future. So we're inspired to do that. So Buddha came to this world in order to bring everyone to awakening, because this is possible for everyone. Doesn't mean it'll happen like that, but it's possible. It takes practice. And his story is the story of a practitioner. He practiced many, many, many lifetimes to become a Buddha. And then in this lifetime, he leaves home. I think that's where we left off last time. He leaves home in order to seek awakening, in order to seek relief from the cycle he has seen. He has met, an old man, a sick man, a corpse. This was last time, right? This was mentioned. And he's like, what? This is what happens? Psychologically very realistic. Like, he's 28 years old and very intelligent. And yet the stories always portray this as he's getting it for the first time, which is actually a very difficult thing to get, that we are impermanent. It's not all bad. When bad things happen, we can feel this too shall pass. However, our lives will also pass. So how can we make best use of them? So the Buddha studies with the people that there are to study with, the Hindu ascetics, and He does very well, but he feels this isn't taking me to what I need. He has some vision of what he needs to accomplish, and somehow these practices aren't doing it for him. He recalls his vow. This is what he wants. He wants to become a Buddha, like the Buddha that he met, Dipankara, way many, many eons past. And it's prophesied that if he enters a human womb, which he will have to do to be born as a human being, he will either be a very powerful monarch, or he will be a very great religious teacher. And his parents want him to be powerful in the world. So he's born. You've heard about that. I want to go to two things in the time that we have left. He marries, he has a child. He has seen now that life is difficult, that happiness cannot be assured. And so he makes his way, finally, to what's called the diamond throne, the Vajra seat, under the Bodhi tree. He's practiced for 6 years, according to all traditions. According to the Mahayana tradition, he's been a Buddha long ago, and now he's going to sit on this seat and show what it's like to become a Buddha, what happens. Well, first of all, he sits down with great determination. I think this is a very important point. And this verse I recognize from other stories as well, Tales of the Buddha from very early time. Some people feel that meditation is all about reducing stress, which it will definitely do, but that's just between us, not its ultimate purpose, I'm sorry to say. It will do this, and if it's what it brings you to the mat, that's fine, because it is necessary to learn how to be at ease. I'm not belittling it. But it also, accomplishment also takes a real intention. Intention is very important, is what we're learning here. So the Bodhisattva, the text says, he set his grass down. He has a little kind of woven mat of grass, cushy grass, I believe, puts that down. Sits on it with the grass tips facing inward and the roots facing outward. He faces east, settles his body in a straight and firm posture, much as we do when we practice. He says, my body may wither upon this seat, okay. My skin, my bones, my flesh may all decay, yet until I gain hard-won awakening, I will not move my body from this seat. He's making a vow. Come what may, I'm going to sit here. And this is important because sometimes sitting is not so easy. If one sits and makes one's way toward the luminosity that is one's nature, well, what modern psychology might call resistance comes up. Do you really want to be all that pure and luminous? Maybe we like our old habits. That's a lot. It's a fight in a way, or at least there's a tension there between what our ultimate wish is and the habits we have for, good pudding or just to chill out watching the TV all night. So it's evening, and he says, I have to conquer the demon Mara. So the Maras are the demons. It's a Sanskrit word, meaning a demon, meaning, in this case, primarily it means distraction. You sit down to meditate, as we are about to do, and you observe your breath. And of course, your mind goes somewhere else. It distracts you. He casts a brilliant light from the space between his eyes. The light is called destroyer of the demon realm. In other words, he's going to make use of his luminosity not to be overwhelmed by the Maras. The Maras don't like this. The Maras, just like our own distracted self, really doesn't like to see awakening happening. Mara likes people to be distracted. That's what he does. He distracts people. And he comes with his whole family. He parades his beautiful daughters in front of the Buddha. Hurry, worry, and flurry. Some translation of vaguely their Sanskrit names. They're temptations. They're flaunting. Nothing happens to the Buddha. He has nothing distracts him. It is said that Tara laughs. According to the later tradition, Tara laughs 8 times at this moment, and he becomes very, very stable in his meditation. Nothing can move him. So Mara's really angry. He brings a whole army of Maras, and they all shoot arrows. There's some very vivid imagery of this. They shoot arrows at him, at the Buddha. He just stays in his state. And they turn to flowers and they drop at his feet. So he conquers the Maras and he begins to have visions which give rise to understanding. He understands the process of dependent arising, a theme we will talk about more later. He understands that everything is arising and ceasing based on causes and conditions, which means that things are interdependent, which means that things are multiply caused, which means that things can change, which if you're on the seat headed toward awakening, that's a good thing. Even our worst habits are not like stone. They feel that way. So just before dawn, in an instant, in a single beat of a drum, he understands this. And because of this instantaneous understanding, he becomes truly awakened, just like that. My path has come to an end. My suffering has been pacified. And the Buddhas appear and tell him, just as we achieved awakening, you did too. You have become a Buddha, just like butter and buttercream. There's a metaphor, famous in slightly later literature, that, if you churn milk, which is a common pastime in India and Tibet, you churn milk, you will get butter. It's in the nature of the milk to give you butter. All you have to do is stir it. You don't need to add anything. You don't need incantations or spells. You just stir the... So the same idea is that we, like milk, if we stir ourselves through practice, we become Buddhas. One of the things that Buddha also sees, he sees beings, it's described in various versions, beings dying and being born. He has this great apocalyptic kind of vision of beings vast as space, dying and being born. And not randomly, dying and being born in accordance with actions that they have done. So this becomes the best basis of ethical teaching later on, that our actions are important, how we act in the world, with our bodies, our speech, our mind. The more wholesomely, the more unharmfully, and if possible, helpfully we behave, the better it is for everyone, and the better it is also for us. So there's no judgment day, but our actions create our future. A topic for another time. Indeed, based on this, once Buddha begins to teach, he teaches the famous Four Noble Truths. Just say a word about them here, and we'll continue this. This is the first teaching. This is the ground of all of the teachings. Life is unsatisfactory. dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but really, we don't suffer all the time. However, our happiness is never secure. So something can always happen. That's unsatisfactory. The fact that our lives end is unsatisfactory. The fact that our beloved ones can die, that's unsatisfactory. It's not an active suffering at every moment. Impermanence is considered a very powerful teaching because through it we recognize that life is precious, not to be taken for granted. No day, no hour should be taken for granted. And it is not forever. So it behooves us to consider in our own way and at our own pace, what is the best use of my time? To understand impermanence can have a profound effect on a human being. There's a country and western song that I think is too passé now, perhaps for you to know the lyrics to, but they're a great set of lyrics. The chorus is, you will perhaps know Paulo, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. After getting a terrible diagnosis, he wishes now for everyone to live like you are dying. You know that song? Do you? It's very powerful. And we know from stories of people who have near-death experiences, it's a powerful, powerful shift. To live like you are dying means to live in really heartfelt gratitude and appreciation for what we do have, and to cultivate ways like the Buddha did in order to make our way through the difficulties of samsara, which is a promise that is possible if we make effort. So I'll stop here for today, and next time we'll hear about the amazing effect that this teaching on impermanence had for one particular nun, a very moving story, and also a story of how Buddha relates to his students. Okay. Welcome. Are you here for the first time? And what is your name, may I ask?